Hi everyone, welcome back to the last game in the Student Game Showcase Section D. This is Jason, the president of SGDA. Magna, if you'd like to introduce yourself and the team.
Hello, I'm Magna, the marketing lead, back again. And here we have Dashteroids. Vic, would you like to introduce yourself and your name?
Yes, my name is Kenechukwu. But Rise on side, I'm at the side, and I'm just going to go for the Dashteroids.
Can you give us a little bit of info about Dashteroids is and also how it got started?
Yeah, so Dashteroids is an action focused on the ice dash studio. We didn't start with the same we were talking about first I chose to shoot it to Dash and the rest of the battle mode in particular, like the Fire project, probably class, me to shoot something to expand upon, and I actually and I'm looking on
Awesome. Yeah, definitely there's like a lot of potential with like the whole with Dash as a go versus with shooting, especially because like it almost acts as a bit of a similar kind of mechanic, but I think with more interactivity, having just play and have Dash. With the game itself, how has the idea kind of evolved from when we first started? I know it was for class, but I guess were there initial ideas that you were thinking of prior to kind of lighting on this one?
Yeah, there are a couple of it should be more of like a puzzle shooting hybrid. But overall, once I land on the Dash idea, that's stayed fairly consistent. I think the biggest thing that's changed is how the game controlled. I played around with tank controls on a keyboard, like the original like the original Asteroids game. Then I played around with mouse controls and eventually gamepad controls. So that's probably been the biggest way the game has changed.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely like the control scheme can definitely affect whether or not the game as a whole too. In terms of again with like with development as a whole, since you mentioned this is for a class, how long have you been actually working on the game?
I started this back in mid to late January. This portion of the class went until around February, and then I returned to it in June and spent the past 3 months fixing some bugs and further polishing some of the battle mode aspects.
Awesome. So about like 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. In terms of the art style as a whole, because I know you mentioned it was inspired by the Asteroids game, but I guess kind of what drew you to sort of do more of this like geometric shapes for the game itself?
Contribute to that I am a programmer first and an artist. Yeah, that's probably the simplest answer. We were given a template that had like everything more. It's I want to like go through the base, and that then I think I can make it work as it works. So
yeah, definitely, because it feels very cohesive. Like even though it's quite simple, it feels overall like it makes sense for Dashteroids. Like this is what I kind of think.
That's what the cat is like stars.
Definitely. I guess speaking of which, are you planning on continuing development on this overall, or like what else would you add?
Sure. So I'm currently working on a different game called Captain Crackle on early access on Steam. But once I finish that, I have sections you might see, that definitely the meaning of the pipe. Adding more to the score attack mode, having more of the progression from like different kinds of asteroids, asteroids speeding up points, and that with the button of power, the most fun. The 15 seconds, which and maybe with teams only by now like as missions and with pipe rings like online leaderboard, online gadgets and stuff. I'm focusing with the Dashteroids right now. I very good podcast. Definitely the section. Yeah, boy, as work was this.
Yeah, overscoping is always like the bane of all game developers' existences. In terms of the kind of the multiplayer aspect, how do you make a multiplayer game that lacks in its vanilla form? This is kind of a question I remember you wrote on your entry sheet into the stream, so I want to kind of ask you, like, how do you talk about kind of implementing the multiplayer aspects of this game?
Yeah, so I think about this. About just being tied to what such a passion, or even my own memories of that too. It's like a game that you can see with other things you can thematic too. And I think there's a lot of like depth and exploration, like, but sometimes not because of it, like your exploration term, but like you can include that with exploration. I think I want to add Dashteroids to things like power-ups, for instance. But yeah, it's something I'm still exploring and be able to achieve first in the dance. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. That makes a lot of sense, especially because with I think it can quickly get really overcomplicated. So it makes sense to kind of want to stick to being able to polish and kind of make the most out of like creating experience for players as well. Of course, sorry, I'm like switching between fighting Jason and the questions. What are some things that you found was the most difficult part of development?
I was watching the title clear to my question out. What about how the input was nephew? And right why they could have because I want that to be hard to forget. I still have it's not a clear small it's a teaching or it's
Got it, yeah, absolutely. Tutorials are like the bane of my existence as well, along with overscoping. Like, it's sometimes because you don't like in terms of like audience, you don't know who's going to be playing the game, and sometimes kind of like what you think is like basic game knowledge is sometimes not. Especially when it comes to controls. But I guess
that's my point.
yeah. Awesome. I guess in terms of speaking of like developing, what was something that you find the most proud about this game? What are you most proud of about this game? Is I guess better, more accurate.
I think it's the walkthrough. I've played this with 4 people that I've watched people play it, and really people's reactions and my own like general reactions, like surprise or like, oh, I'm gonna get you, and like a lot of like fun moments.
Yeah.
I like the single player mode. I do think it's fun. I would like to expand on that, but I am really proud of how the battle mode turned out, particularly in a 4-player setting.
Yeah, gotcha. Especially because like multiplayer brings in just another another fun level to any type of game too. Especially here, because I'm already kind of getting locked in trying to aim my Dashteroid at him. Yeah, awesome. Since we started late, I think we do have a bit more time overall. But I would say in terms of like the genre of kind of arcade games, would you say that you're like a big fan of them, or was it something that you were kind of more introduced to in your experimental games class?
I I've come to arcade games have like grown on me over the past few years as I've explored more of game design. And I think arcade games in particular are super interesting because they feel really unique in comparison to other mediums. It feels like they highlight what makes games super cool. Like there's
Yeah.
always some new stories to write for the player to write with an arcade game, even if it's like the same map. And it's why so many games like Pac-Man, Twin Bee, Mappy, like arcade classics to the test of time because there's such like really focused gameplay that's focused on like mastery and new experiences and stuff like that. That sort of endless potential. I like games with like confined like stories and stuff. I really do, but there's something very unique about arcade games. I think it's why even today you see a lot of design inspired by them, almost like what's happening like in indie.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially because, like, if you're playing with friends too, you make kind of, there's sort of that memory attached to it as well with when it comes to arcades, and there's a reason why they're still around today too. Yeah. So, in terms of time, we do have like about 3 minutes or so. And in terms of questions, we're pretty much almost done. But in terms of the, um, I guess like, do you want to shout out anyone before we end off the section?
Yes. So first thanks to the SGDA for hosting this event and
Yeah.
for all you guys who are watching and supporting game developers. That's pretty cool. My classmates and professor from the experimental game design class, as well as my school's game creation society for hosting my game at one of their events. And last but certainly not least, the friends and family who've been playtesting the game and just generally been supporting me throughout development of all my projects.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing your game with us. You can play Dashteroids on itch.io as well as you have another game on there as well,
Yeah,
Fractal.
Castle Fractal.
Yeah,
It's
Castle Fractal. Yeah.
yes, that is in early access on Steam, and it's gameplay complete. But my team and I are working on the aesthetics, like the character designs and the music, just to have that feel more of a complete experience. But it is gameplay complete and available for purchase on Steam in early access.
Awesome. And definitely if you do or when you do complete the aesthetics, feel free to resubmit that again next year for the summit because we would really like to see it because we played through it for the grants and such. But definitely open to seeing it in its full glory.
So thanks.
Yeah, awesome. So that ends our showcase section D for the summit. And then up next is our mini art show. That'll be a little slightly delayed since we did have some technical issues, but we thank you for your patience. And thank you to Dashteroids for sharing their game.
Thank you so much.